The single father never meant to expose a decade-old secret when he sat down at the piano that night. But the moment the melody rose into the air, the powerful CO across the marble lobby went deathly still, because she was hearing the exact song her dying daughter had written for her, a song no one else in the world was supposed to know. The annual Winter Gala at Ashford and Roe Enterprises glittered beneath cascading crystal chandeliers. The 42nd floor of the glass tower in downtown Boston transformed into a shimmering forest of silver garlands and white roses, with a 12-foot fir tree standing like a monarch near the executive elevators while investors, board members, and city officials clinked champagne flutes and discussed expansion projects along the harbor. Daniel Reeves moved through the crowd almost invisibly, his Navy maintenance uniform freshly pressed but still unmistakably utilitarian among tuxedos and couture gowns, his hands rough from years of fixing boilers and electrical panels, a faint scar running across his right palm, where bone had once nearly splintered beyond repair, and beside him stood his 8-year-old daughter Lily, clutching his fingers with quiet awe as her wide hazel eyes reflected the twinkling lights, her dark curls pinned back with a ribbon she had insisted on wearing. "Because it's fancy, Daddy." Even though he'd worried all evening that bringing her had been a mistake he couldn't afford to correct. At 38, Daniel carried himself with a restrained dignity that most executives mistook for mere compliance. They saw the building's overnight repairman, the man who adjusted thermostats and replaced flickering bulbs, but they did not see the former conservatory student who once played late-night jazz sets in Cambridge bars to pay tuition, nor the volunteer piano instructor who had spent quiet afternoons in a pediatric oncology ward a decade earlier, coaxing fragile fingers across ivory keys while pretending the world beyond sterile walls wasn't counting down. He had long ago learned that talent without status rarely survived in rooms like this, so he kept his head down, answered politely when spoken to, and focused on Lily's excitement as she gasped softly at the chocolate fountain and the towering cake shaped like a snow globe. Above them, from the mezzanine lined with polished brass railings, Vivian Hale surveyed the scene with the poised detachment that had made her one of Boston's youngest and most formidable CEOs. At 35, she wore a sleek emerald gown that shimmered under the lights, her dark hair swept into a low chignon that exposed diamond studs at her ears, her posture unyielding as she greeted donors and city council members with measured smiles, her reputation built on sharp acquisitions and a refusal to show weakness in an industry that devoured hesitation. Yet beneath the tailored composure lay a wound no quarterly report could quantify. 10 years earlier, her 9-year-old daughter Emma had succumbed to leukemia after a relentless battle, leaving behind hospital drawings, a stuffed rabbit worn thin at the ears, and 8 bars of handwritten piano melody titled, "Always With You," a simple but haunting theme Emma had scribbled in a lined notebook the week before her final surgery, telling her mother it was a song, "So you'll remember I'm not really gone." And Vivian had locked that notebook in her office safe after the funeral, unable to bear the thought of anyone else hearing those notes, unable to bear the possibility that the melody might fade from her memory if she let it escape into the world. The evening progressed with orchestrated perfection until Lily slipped on a thin sheen of spilled champagne near the dessert table, her small body hitting the marble floor with a sharp crack that seemed to echo louder than the string quartet's music. She tried to swallow her cry, brave in the way children sometimes are when they sense their parents' pride is fragile, but tears spilled anyway as blood seeped through her tights at the knee, and Daniel was there instantly, dropping to the floor, pressing his folded handkerchief against the scrape, murmuring reassurances in a low steady tone that carried the rhythm of lullabies learned the hard way, his jaw tightening when a sharply dressed executive muttered something about staff decorum, though before Daniel could respond, Vivian herself descended from the mezzanine, her heels striking marble with decisive authority as she silenced the murmurs with a single glance. She ordered that the first aid kit be brought and instructed Daniel to take the private elevator to the executive lounge so Lily could rest, and for a fleeting second their eyes met, his gray-green gaze cautious yet steady, hers piercing and unreadable, and something unspoken flickered between them, a recognition neither could name. An hour later, when Lily returned bandaged but smiling faintly after hot chocolate and a cookie from a sympathetic assistant, She tugged Daniel toward the grand piano station near the panoramic windows overlooking the snow-dusted skyline. The instrument usually kept closed as a decorative symbol of sophistication rather than artistry. "Daddy, please," she whispered, her voice sleepy but hopeful. And Daniel hesitated as old fears tightened in his chest, memories of abandoned auditions and hospital corridors rising uninvited. Yet he could never deny Lily when she looked at him like that. So he sat down on the polished bench, flexed his scarred fingers once, and let them hover above the keys while conversations gradually hushed in curiosity. The first notes emerged soft as snowfall, tentative yet precise, carrying a childlike simplicity that felt almost out of place amid corporate grandeur. But then the melody unfolded into something deeper, each phrase layered with longing and warmth, a progression so intimately structured it seemed to whisper secrets into the vaulted ceiling. And across the room Vivian Hale stopped mid-conversation, her breath catching violently in her throat as the champagne glass in her hand slipped and shattered at her feet. Color drained from her face because she knew that melody, not an approximation, not a coincidence, but the exact cadence, the delicate pause before the third measure, the hopeful lift in the seventh bar. It was always with you, her daughter's psalm, the fragment she had guarded like a relic. And as Daniel's hands moved with quiet conviction, completing and expanding the 8 bars into a soaring continuation she had never heard, yet instinctively recognized as belonging. The marble lobby seemed to tilt beneath her, and the powerful CO, who commanded multi-million-dollar negotiations, stood frozen like a grieving mother hearing her child's voice carried impossibly through music, knowing with bone-deep certainty that this man at her company's piano was playing something that should not exist outside her memory, and realizing, with dawning shock, that the past she had sealed away had just found its way back to her in the most public, undeniable way possible. The applause had barely begun when Vivian Hale raised her hand, and the entire marble lobby fell into a stunned, uneasy silence, because the look on her face was not admiration. It was recognition mixed with something dangerously close to grief. Daniel Reeves slowly lifted his hands from the keys, the last note of the melody still trembling in the air like a fragile thread, and when he turned, he found the So, standing only a few feet away, her emerald gown catching the chandelier light while her expression had gone pale and stripped of corporate composure. Lily, sensing the sudden tension, slid closer to her father's side and wrapped both hands around his arm as Vivian's voice emerged low and unsteady, nothing like the controlled tone she used in board meetings. "Where did you learn that song?" she asked, each word deliberate, each syllable carrying weight. Around them, executives exchanged confused glances, unaware that they were witnessing something far more intimate than a holiday performance. Daniel's throat tightened. He had imagined this confrontation for years in restless dreams, but never like this. Never beneath crystal chandeliers with half the company watching. "It's an old melody," he said carefully. "One I heard a long time ago." Vivian's jaw clenched. "Don't insult me." The steel returned to her voice, but it trembled at the edges. "That song was written by my daughter. She died 10 years ago. No one else had the sheet music. No one." A murmur rippled through the guests. Marcus Caldwell, the company's CFO and Vivian's impeccably groomed fiancé, stepped forward with visible irritation. "Vivian, this is inappropriate." "He's staff. If he somehow obtained private material." "Be quiet, Marcus," she snapped without looking at him. Daniel swallowed hard. Lily looked up at him, confused. "Daddy," she whispered. He crouched briefly so he was eye level with her. "It's okay, sweetheart." But his heart was pounding. When he rose again, he met Vivian's gaze directly. "I didn't steal it," he said quietly. "Emma wrote it." "You're right." Vivian's breath hitched violently at the sound of her daughter's name spoken by a stranger. "How do you know her name?" The room felt smaller now, suffocating. Daniel exhaled slowly, as though stepping back into a memory he had tried for years to carry without breaking. "Because I knew her," he said. "I was a volunteer piano instructor at St. Catherine's Pediatric Center in Cambridge. Thursdays and Saturdays, I worked with children undergoing treatment. Emma was one of my students." The words seemed to echo. Vivian's fingers tightened around the back of a nearby chair. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I was there every day." "Not every day," Daniel said gently. "You were running this company after your husband passed. You came in the evenings. Emma had morning sessions. She didn't want you missing meetings. The truth of that struck Vivian like a physical blow. Marcus scoffed. This is absurd. Anyone could fabricate. Marcus, she said again, her voice dangerously quiet. He stepped back. Daniel continued, the dam of restraint finally giving way. She didn't want you to feel guilty. She told me that. She said you looked tired all the time, that you smiled differently in the hospital than you did in photographs. Vivian's composure cracked visibly. A tear slipped free despite her effort to hold it back. She wrote those first 8 bars in a spiral notebook, Daniel said, his voice softer now. The melody was simple, but the way she structured the progression, it wasn't random. She understood emotional resolution. I asked her where she learned that. He paused, swallowing. She said she listened to you hum when you thought she was asleep. The lobby was utterly silent. Lily squeezed his hand tighter. Vivian shook her head slowly, overwhelmed. No one knew that, she whispered. She made me promise, Daniel continued, that if things didn't go the way she hoped, I would finish it someday. She said it needed an ending that felt like staying, not leaving. Vivian's knees nearly buckled. She reached for the piano to steady herself. You finished it, she said faintly. Yes. Daniel's eyes glistened. But I never meant to play it publicly. I tried contacting you after she passed. I left messages with reception. I sent a letter to this building addressed to you personally. I never heard back. Vivian's head snapped up. I never received anything. I figured as much, Daniel replied quietly. After a while, I stopped trying. I thought maybe it wasn't my place. Marcus stepped in again, clearly agitated. This is emotional manipulation. He's exploiting a tragedy to elevate himself. Vivian, this could become a liability issue. Stop talking, she said, louder this time, her authority slicing through him. She turned back to Daniel. Why now? He looked down at Lily, brushing a curl away from her face. Because she asked me to play, he said simply. And because I was tired of the song existing only in silence. Vivian closed her eyes. Memories flooded in, Emma's frail hands tapping rhythms on hospital trays. The way she insisted her mother not cry in front of her, the unfinished melody sitting locked in a drawer like a sealed time capsule. You added more than an ending, Vivian said, her voice fragile. There was a middle passage I've never heard. Daniel nodded slowly. Emma talked about how you used to dance with her in the kitchen when she was little. She described the way you'd spin her and pretend the tiles were a ballroom. That section, that was meant to feel like movement. Like you were still dancing. Vivian let out a broken sound that was half laugh, half sob. The executive standing nearby shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to leave or remain frozen as witnesses to something sacred. Lily looked up at Vivian curiously. My daddy says songs don't end when people leave, she said softly. They just change shape. The innocence of it cut deeper than anything else said that night. Vivian knelt slightly, so she was eye level with Lily. Your father taught you that? Lily nodded proudly. Vivian rose again, turning back to Daniel with eyes no longer icy but searching. If what you're saying is true, she said carefully, then that melody belongs to both of us. Daniel hesitated. It always did. Marcus muttered something under his breath about optics and shareholders. Vivian ignored him completely. Play it again, she said to Daniel, her voice no longer commanding but asking. Not for them. She gestured faintly to the room. For me. And in that charged, suspended moment, beneath chandeliers, beneath judgmental stares, beneath 10 years of unspoken grief, Daniel slowly sat back down at the piano, knowing that whatever happened next would change all of their lives forever. The second time Daniel Rees played the melody, the marble lobby no longer felt like a corporate stage. It felt like a chapel, and when the final note dissolved into silence, Vivian Hale realized she was no longer listening as a CEO protecting her image, but as a mother finally allowing herself to grieve. The room remained hushed long after the music faded, as if no one dared disturb whatever invisible thread had just been pulled tight between past and present. Daniel's scarred fingers rested lightly on the keys, his shoulders tense, bracing for consequences, but when he turned this time, he did not see suspicion in Vivian's eyes. He saw tears freely falling, unchecked, unhidden, and for the first time in a decade, she did not wipe them away. Marcus Caldwell stepped forward again, clearly uncomfortable with the rawness unfolding before high-level investors. Vivian, he said tightly, This has gone far enough. We have press contacts in this building tonight. If word spreads that a maintenance employee is making emotional claims about your late daughter." "He isn't making claims," Vivian interrupted, her voice steady now in a different way, not cold, but grounded. "He's telling the truth." Marcus stared at her. "You can't possibly verify that." Vivian's jaw set. "I can." She turned back to Daniel. "You said Emma described our kitchen dancing." Daniel nodded once. "Yellow tiles. A crack near the stove you used to joke was abstract art. She said you hated cooking but loved the music." Vivian's breath hitched. No press release or public record could have contained that detail. Marcus went silent. The investors shifted, sensing the gravity of something more powerful than quarterly earnings. Vivian straightened slowly, reclaiming her height, but not her armor. "Everyone," she said, addressing the room with calm authority, "the gala is concluded for the evening. Thank you for coming." There was no room for debate in her tone. Security began gently guiding guests toward the elevators as whispers followed in their wake. Within minutes, the glittering hall emptied until only 4 figures remained beneath the chandeliers: Vivian, Daniel, Lily, and Marcus, who lingered, unwilling to relinquish control. "You're making a mistake," he said in a low voice meant only for Vivian. "Emotion does not run corporations." Vivian turned to him fully. "No," she agreed softly. "But humanity should." Marcus's lips thinned. "Think about what this looks like." "I am," she replied. "And I don't like what it says about us." The engagement ring on her finger suddenly felt heavy. She slid it off slowly, deliberately, and placed it on the closed lid of the piano. Marcus stared at it, as if it were a personal insult. "You're ending this?" "Over a song." "No," Vivian said. "Over what the song revealed." His expression hardened. "Investors won't appreciate instability. Then they're free to reassess their portfolios," she answered calmly. "But I won't reassess my conscience." Marcus left without another word, the echo of his polished shoes fading down the corridor. Silence settled again, softer this time. Lily, sleepy and unaware of corporate ramifications, leaned against her father's side. "Is the lady sad?" she whispered. Daniel crouched beside her. "A little," he said gently. Lily walked over to Vivian with hesitant steps and held out her small hand. "It's okay," she offered. "My daddy says music helps." Vivian stared at the child's outstretched fingers for a moment before taking them. The warmth startled her, not because it was unexpected, but because she had forgotten how grounding simple touch could be. She looked at Daniel. "Walk with me," she said quietly. They moved toward the panoramic windows overlooking the Boston skyline, snow beginning to fall in slow, deliberate spirals outside the glass. Lily remained by the piano, tracing keys softly without pressing them. Vivian folded her arms, staring at the city lights. "After Emma died," she began, "I shut everything down that reminded me of her. I told myself it was strength. It wasn't. It was fear." Daniel listened without interrupting. "I couldn't finish the melody," she admitted. "Every time I tried to hum it, I broke." Daniel's voice was careful. "She didn't want it to break you." Vivian's eyes closed briefly. "I know that now." She turned to him. "Why didn't you ever play professionally again?" He flexed his right hand unconsciously. "Nerve damage," he said simply. "A stage rig collapsed during a rehearsal years ago. I pushed someone out of the way. It ended my performance career." Vivian absorbed that quietly. "And you never told Emma." "She didn't need to carry that," he replied. "She already carried enough." Snow thickened outside, muting the city below. Vivian studied him, really studied him, not as an employee, but as a man who had honored a promise no one else even knew existed. "I've built this company on strategy," she said. "But strategy didn't save my daughter. Compassion did. Volunteers did. People like you did." Daniel shifted slightly, uncomfortable with praise. "I just showed up." Vivian's voice softened. "That's more than most." Lily yawned loudly near the piano, drawing their attention. Daniel smiled faintly. "We should get her home." Vivian hesitated, then said, "Come back tomorrow." Daniel looked wary. "Am I fired?" A flicker of amusement crossed her face. "No," she stepped closer. "I want to establish a foundation in Emma's name. Music programs in pediatric hospitals. I'd like you to direct it." Daniel blinked, stunned. "I'm a maintenance worker." "You're a musician," Vivian corrected gently. "And you kept a promise I couldn't." He looked at Lily, then back at Vivian. "I don't belong in boardrooms." "Then we'll meet in practice rooms," she replied. A quiet understanding passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but something built on shared memory and restored purpose. Daniel extended his hand slowly. She took it without hesitation. The handshake felt less like a business agreement and more like a bridge being rebuilt plank by plank. One condition, Vivian added softly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You keep playing it. Not just for me. For her. He nodded once. I will. As they gathered Lily's coat and moved toward the elevators, Vivian glanced back at the piano standing alone beneath the chandelier light. For 10 years, silence had ruled her grief. Tonight, music had interrupted it. And as the doors closed and the snow continued to fall beyond the glass tower, Vivian Hale understood something that no financial forecast could quantify. The melody her daughter wrote had not been resurrected to haunt her. It had returned to guide her forward.